It is spring LCS 2024 playoffs time, guys, and I am here to deliver the lovely previews for these series, highlighting their strengths, their weaknesses, what possible bans we might see, what possible comps we might see, and what adjustments that these teams might be able to make in the short time they've had since week 6. So let's go right into it with the first series of 100 Thieves versus C9. We must highlight the adjustments that teams need to make. First, for 100, probably not a whole lot. There's just a very little amount that I can mention for it. They basically played the same style and had the same identity throughout. And this is both a good and a bad thing. The good thing is it allows you to collect wins in best of one era, allows you to really nail down the issues you're having throughout. And yeah, it's a good thing to have, but at the same time, it's pretty self-aware of what you're all about. And unless, like, if you start having certain bans hit you in the right spots by C9, it could really limit how good you do. So for 100, I would say the most obvious things that they should work on or ensure are good to go is Sniper's chat pool. Make sure it's big enough, make sure they have enough champions for him to play throughout the entire best of series. For bot lane, it's a little bit similar as well. Make sure you have like 1 or 2 more picks added in just in case of how C9 adjusts what they want to do. For mid jungle, they're fine. I think both River and Quid are probably one of the 2 players that have like the biggest champ pools, especially for their lanes, their roles. So those guys are probably fine. For C9, you know, they've done a variety of things. They've done a ton of Lucian, which has been pretty average. And I'm going to be honest, Berserker is not him. He's definitely not him for this split, but specifically he's not him on Lucian. And I don't think they should touch that champion. Even if they invested time in it, I don't think they should touch that champion unless, and it's a very big unless, they ban the right champions in bot lane, so there's not like some iffy situations where, oh, well, 100 just gets this simple scaling bot lane that actually just survives and they're fine. Like, if that happens, I mean, C9's not going to win. So they need to make sure, like I said, for Berserker specifically, they should be playing more scaling / teamfight focused ADCs. I don't see Meech and Ayla as being a prevalent like Kalista team. I saw them play Kalista. It was really whatever. I don't think C9 has to play Kalista, but they could. It definitely is doable, especially if Vulcan is like, because Vulcan will be, and this is a big thing I'll say, should be on a playmaker. When Vulcan is on a playmaker, he is far better, and they showed that, I think it was in like week 4/5, where he's playing Nautilus, he's playing Bard. It looks so much better when he was on these champions. Yeah, they lost to 100 with Bard, but he caught Meech out a couple times, and if they hit a few more abilities at times, they would have won. And that is the direction like C9 has to go for their bot lane. Like, they should be focused on either having Vulcan on a playmaker, which will be really good, or you take a dual lane that is focused on enabling Berserker, not in terms of getting a self-lead in bot lane, but being a strong overall pick throughout the game like Zeri, and pushing that aspect of him because he showed that he can be him on that pick, for instance, and playing it out that way. Like, those are your 2 options in bot lane with this team. I don't think this team should be playing the Kalistas. I don't think they should really be playing. I mean, they can play Varus, and they had success on Varus. Same with like 100. So if you take Varus, it's like a takeaway. And also you can put Nautilus in there for Vulcan, which would be really nice too. But outside of that, like, avoid the Lucian, avoid the Kalista, and like put more focus on this stuff. At least have one of these 2 aspects in bot lane going for you, and it'll look better. The Lucian Nami and Lucian Emilio, good God, please no. Please don't do that anymore. For mid, specifically, you know, Jojo, he was the best this year in the entire league. He was, I mean, like, he just knew how to shuffle at the right timings. He knew how to use his E in position in a way. So he knew the limits of his champion, I guess, basically far better than most other Azir players. And it's gone. And it was a really an ideal pick too, because Azir has his E, his ability to like dash away. So he had a very high presence in lane. And when Jojo can do that, Jojo is the most effective for the C9, because the C9 team is a turtling team. Like I said, you know, if they choose the right picks in bot lane, the way Fudge plays, most specifically for CS, and then also Blabber is a much more like high tempo like farming jungler, so he makes himself strong and he plays on just the right timers. This is something like Inspired kind of does as well. And of course, if your lanes all play correctly while having this style as a jungler, everyone is strong. Not everyone is strong, and you're always present to be able to make a play without actively screwing yourself. River is not on the same side in that River has to kind of be making plays, especially because his lane's light playing forward, specifically his top and his mid. So River has adapted this style more so than Blabber being more calm, and Blabber never changed his style, which he probably should have at times, because, you know, that's kind of an indication that you're a great jungler, someone who can play multiple styles, not just one. But Blabber hasn't done that, so he's just going to do the same thing he always does. So your lanes kind of need to reflect that and then add on to that. So that's why Vulcan being on the playmaker is so nice, because now you have two playmakers. You have Jojo and you have Vulcan, right? For Fudge, I think specifically for him, I was really hoping to see if he would be the guy coming into this split. He's not. He's just not. He's not the person who's taking control, and it's not like Impact. Even Sniper does a better job than him at like actually being the guy. But Sniper has a lower champ pool. Like, he plays a ton of Aatrox. He plays a little bit of Renekton, but it hasn't gone the best. He played a bunch of Cassante, but like Cassante's not really that big of an issue at this point. More specifically, he plays Olaf. That has actually been really, really good. Now, these are two champions that Fudge also plays, but Fudge has not done well on Aatrox, and I think that's a very easy ban. I think Olaf is also a pretty easy ban. And then at this point, Fudge can play more champions like the Malphite, the Gragas, the Udyr. You know, how would I say it? Like, he's probably one of the few players who actually would bust out the Malphite into Jace. So if Sniper's like, well, I lost two core champions, you're like, I'll play the Jace though. He'll play Malphite and it'll be fine. So, like, especially if like 100 goes like the center direction, then you have Malphite into two champions who probably aren't going to do a ton of damage to it. That is, I think, the avenue that C9 has to take. If they adjust properly, Fudge will be on these type of champions that just kind of nullify what Sniper does completely, and then you can put all your focus in the mid jungle. And assuming that your bot lane, like, you ban maybe... Again, I don't think 100's bot lane is all that. Like, specifically in level 1s, they will try to get the bot brush or be in the bot brush before their opponents just so they can have an early start advantage. If you fill that out from the level 1 and then you have just kind of even lanes, Berserker will do better on the right pick. If your top laner can't really make the same plays he usually can, Fudge will do better because he will get farm. And then that pretty much leaves you the best, like, two of the best playmaking mids, Quid and Jojo. And then Blabber, who, again, if he's on the right pick and he's just farming up and getting strong, and then River is trying to make plays but they're not happening, he will fall behind, and then C9 kind of just progressively takes over. That's kind of the avenue I see for them maybe winning. But for 100, for the bans, you know, like I said, there might be some jungle bans that you want to take out that are like, maybe you want to take out a Nilly, and so they don't have like a Renekton Nilly kind of option. Maybe you want to take out... Maybe there's some specific bot lane picks that you're kind of reading they might do from solo queue, from what you're like kind of just anticipating overall that could be problematic. Maybe you want to take out the Nico from Jojo, because Nico is a pretty good pick at harassing a lot of like different mid laners, especially like melee mid laners. Jace, like, she's specifically pretty annoying for those champions. So maybe they want to get rid of that and then kind of take their priority mid pick in an essence, but probably not in the end because JoJo also has a reasonable pool. Like he'll play a bunch of melees, and Quid has some very interesting melee counter picks, to say the least. But if I'm comparing these two teams, I think the bans are a lot easier on C9 side on what to target against 100. And I do think their turtle style can work against 100. Like, again, if they do the right picks, the right adjustments, this turtle style can work. And they'll kind of just win over time. It will require some execution and not like mis-executing like they did at times in their last like head-to-head matchup, but this is why I'm going to say it's a 3-1 C9 victory. It's surprising for me to say that because it's like you're taking the team that played pretty well across the entire split, a team that I literally voted almost every single player into my all pros. So you think, well, if they're doing that good, like surely they like will win, right? But I think this team does have holes, and I think the style that C9 has, if they really do, like I said, because there's so many veterans on the team, it's not like you just have a bunch of rookies where it's hard to pivot. They know what they can do well at. All it requires them to be like, okay, it's time to just shut up and do the work. Like let's just get this shit done. And so for that, I'm taking the risk and saying that they're actually gonna win. So 3-1 C9. The next matchup is FlyQuest versus TL. Now, I would say that TL is actually probably one of the harder matchups for FlyQuest out of all the teams they can play. I think Energy also so happens to like mesh up pretty well into FlyQuest. But TL, the reason why I say TL versus FlyQuest might be a little bit more awkward than usual is because for FlyQuest, Jensen is not like the most in-your-face punishing mid laner. He's not like Quid and he's not like JoJo. That is a benefit towards APA, assuming APA doesn't just int himself. APA also most likely will be playing, as I'll show here, APA most likely will be playing his standard, bullshit picks like Ziggs, like Asol, Talia, Nico. Like he kind of has given up playing these other champions. So if the mid laner, like the opposing mid laner is not like pressing you that hard, these picks do contribute good damage without necessarily having to require both a ton of skill nor a ton of execution. So that's a benefit to APA. For their bot lane, FlyQuest bot lane, yeah, these guys are most likely the best, like in your face, like I'm gonna try to get every small advantage and press you hard bot lane. Of course, they make a lot of mistakes as well, which is where their consistency becomes an issue. And that's also where most teams at this point have been targeting their bot lane because they're like, well, they're always playing this out, they're always picking these champs, and they're not respecting the timers. So, and it's not like Inspired is just like actively covering them to do this every single game. Like these guys will literally late ward the dot rush, which you could just sweep if you anticipate it, and we'll just go down there and just kill them and just get our advantage. And it's also so happens to be one of the only lanes that actually tries to do something in the early game for FlyQuest. Like it's not like top and mid are actually really doing as much there. And for that reason, it can make things a little bit simple for TL to what should they target? What should they actually go for? To be honest, for instance, if I'm TL, I'm banning Kalista. Why? Because Masu is literally the best Kalista in LCS. Like if you watch him, and I've watched him obviously from NACL when even from the tryouts that I ran and like eventually picked him up from. Like his Kalista is really good, like really good. And I don't want him on that champion. And, maybe you ban the Varus too, which would be surprising to take out both. No, actually, it wouldn't be so surprising to take out both champions, because to me, banning Varus, banning Kalista, that limits what he has to kind of press you. Yeah, he has the Ezreal Karma as well on the back pocket. Not as annoying of a thing to actually deal with in the end. And I find that Masu doesn't play the scaling picks as well. Like his Sivir, he can navigate fights, he can do it, but just not having the same early presence that he's used to having doesn't make the champion as impactful in his hands. His Smolder did not look impactful at all. Like he will still try to press in ways that the champion is just not designed to do. So that's kind of like his limiter. I would say things like Zaya, things like Kaisa would be like Aphelios would be like the additions towards FlyQuest's like direction with them. I'd probably avoid the Ezreal if possible. Unless like you're flexing the Karma, which then, you know, yeah, like you could definitely go that route because Jensen will play the Karma and Karma mid is still pretty good. At least I think it's pretty good. I actually can't remember if there was. Yeah, I think it's still good. Yeah. It took me a second to think about the patch notes, but you can run the Karma. You can run the Karma mid. You can also do Ezreal Karma, and it's like fine. But I feel like the meshes of like Aphelios Lulu, like Zaya Rakan, these are better directions if the cases are, and I assume the cases of Kalista Varus being gone, especially if they're playing things like if TL ends up going I think for Yeon specifically, matching Master is not the best choice. Like you getting the Senna is good, technically. Like Senna Nautilus is pretty good. At the same time, you might see like again like Aphelios being brought out, and even though it has risk playing into Nautilus, which is not always the best, I know he has the confidence to play it. Maybe he plays the XR into this shit, and you just take it as is because I'd rather be dealing with that kind of stuff than with, like I said, Kalista or Varus. And then the next ban I could think of, and again, this is going to really depend because if you feel like you're confident on giving FlyQuest Smolder, because FlyQuest will choose blue side, 100%. If FlyQuest bans Smolder, awesome. If they don't, you kind of have a choice on banning Smolder, or maybe you want to ban Olaf, because I think Olaf generally is a good champion, especially for Whippo. Like it's like he performs on it always, and the chances of them picking Olaf in the 1 through 3 is probably not the highest, and maybe that's why like it won't happen, they won't have to do it. But I do find that his Olaf, even if it's a little behind, will always have side push, find these options. And for TL specifically, with the way Impact plays, they do a 1-3-1, right? Pretty natural, but they'll go into a 1-4 where Impact overstays, he shifts, he overstays, even if it's from base. And this gives you free side push and like options to grow. FlyQuest is like good at finding farm in the sides. Like, they're pretty damn good at finding farm in the sides. If not the best team at doing it. Jensen is always strong. Bippo always finds farm. And Masu, like, you know, he just gets like what he can, right? In mid lane. Inspired is also always farming. Like everyone like feels strong. And this team, initially, I wanted to say that FlyQuest is like just a better version of C9, and that probably is still true, but it's not that FlyQuest is a turtling team. It's just that they play a very standard, like high tempo game. Like there's not so much turtling per se, in that if there's not an ideal play on the map, they won't go for it. Like, you know, like they're not gonna overforce situations, but they're always present and ready for things to happen. And that if you make mistakes as the opposing team, they will punish you. They will punish you, and then they'll take what they can, and then they'll go back to getting the initiative on the map and repeat, rinse cycle. And it feels pretty suffocating because when they do have leads, like they're not, like I said, they're not overly making tons of mistakes, which then leads to you not having as many openings. And then if you screw up that one opening, like it's just done. So when the game pace is like raised higher and FlyQuest is like not performing as well in the early game, that's when things get a lot messier for them. That's when they're really not as good at pulling the trigger and kind of getting stuff back together. But that's not to say that like Inspired doesn't know what these right timings are either, because I know like against both games against Shopify, he realized like, okay, I got to disengage on mid. Even though like we got absolutely smashed in bot lane, if we get this one pick here, like we're back in the game. Oh, like these guys are all like going into bot lane and like covering this stuff. If we go top and we try to force this situation, we might actually win out. And they almost did. Like they do read and will make that last ditch play, but I don't feel like, I feel like when they try to over force these situations, especially in early game, it kind of turns out bad. Like it doesn't really pan out as well. If I was River, I feel like I would have more trust that River would make these things work properly, but with FlyQuest it just doesn't as much. And Umpty is like one of the premier like fight instigators, like invaders, like just making things messy, and that is kind of why I feel like TL has some chance to it. And like I said, with the mid matchup, I also feel like there's some chance to it. Like if I'm FlyQuest, I'm probably aiming bans at most likely their mid lane. Like anything that I think is bullshit annoying in mid lane, and for top lane, there's really not much at all because you have plenty of counters into Udyr. And for bot lane, it would only maybe be like if you want to ban the Senna and like force them into a regular 2v2 bot matchup, which would be definitely better on their side to deal with than them playing some weird like defensive scaling pick that just kind of wins fights later on if you didn't get enough going on. I would say that if things go the way they go in mid lane and that Jensen doesn't get enough done and APA actually is on a like on like a Soul Zig, something that actually like scales up and just adds random damage, and TL has the right approach towards bot lane and FlyQuest doesn't, I kind of have some confidence in TL taking some games. Even though APA and Yeon have not really been playing the best, particularly APA, I actually have some confidence that Team Liquid would maybe take some games. The only thing is FlyQuest has been so consistent and has been doing things in a way that like I guess basically like they are the best team at punishing like other teams just making random mistakes, and the fact that TL is a team that does make these random mistakes, like Umpty does. Umpty will definitely have random ints, and so will APA, even Impact to a degree. It's kind of like, I don't know if I can trust that. In the end, I don't think I can trust that. So I'm going to give TL the benefit of the doubt that they will probably find one game where they have the right idea with draft and approach that gets them a win, but FlyQuest will win 3-1. The confident thing would be FlyQuest wins 3-0. But I'm going to say 3-1 in that I can see holes in like in some of FlyQuest's like play that TL specifically can punish. But can they do that across an entire series? I don't think so. So 3-1 FlyQuest. That rounds out the 2 playoff series. It's 100 Thieves, C9, C9 3-1, FlyQuest TL, FlyQuest 3-1. So hopefully I'm right on that. I might get some shit for saying 100 Thieves doesn't win, especially because it's like some hopium that C9's going to make the right adjustments. And even that one game win by TL is kind of some hopium that, again, like that they're going to identify the right things to ban pick. But you just got to go with your gut feeling. You got to go with your gut feeling, and how I'm feeling out is 2-3-1. So locking it in. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching these previews. I'm going to make sure I cover the previews for the losers bracket once the winners bracket is finished out from the round 1, and we'll continue from there. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe.